I've seen a lot of discourse surrounding former president of baseball operations Mike Rizzo and former manager Davey Martinez. And while, yes, the Nationals needed to start fresh, those two guys should not be talked about the way that some Nats fans remember.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I am your host, Ryan Clary. You can find Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course the video version over on YouTube. Just look up Locked On Nationals, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. And later on in today's program, we'll have a discussion surrounding the new era here in town. But I also want to jump into Davey Martinez and the legacy that he has in Washington, D.C. I think it's important for people to remember that, yes, we did have to move on. It was a correct decision when the Lerner family moved off from Davey Martinez this summer. But also the discourse surrounding him and painting him as this big enemy, I think that's wrong. So stay tuned for that conversation later on in the show today. But we start off with Mike Rizzo, who has been with the Nationals my entire life. As far as I can remember, Mike Rizzo has been the head of baseball ops here in town. Obviously, the Nationals have moved off of him. And I think that the discourse surrounding him as well is wrong. So let's take a look as to why these guys will be legends of the Washington Nationals. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. So we don't really take too much time to talk about the past on this show here. I mean, we really kind of look at day-to-day moves, talk about 2026, talk about Paul Toboni. But today just felt like a day that I wanted to really sit here and discuss why Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez should not really be remembered for the way that things have gone these past few seasons. And beside that, they should be remembered for what they did in the 2010s and ultimately winning a 2019 World Series. Let's start with Mike Rizzo first, though. How I view Mike Rizzo right now, obviously the Nationals made the correct decision to move off him. Mike Rizzo had one thing that really killed him in his time here, and that is with player development. I sat here for years in this exact chair screaming about the fact that the Nationals have not been able to develop talent the ways that other organizations have. For whatever reason out there. Is it him not buying into analytics? Is it him not putting the right tools in the right places? Is it him not allocating resources in the correct decisions? We do not know at this point. But here's what I can know, and here's what I can control. Mike Rizzo is at the head of that operation. So when things are going bad, the heat is going to be directed towards him. And I think that was fair. I think Mike Rizzo deserved a lot of, not bad things said about him, but I do think Mike Rizzo deserved a good chunk of the blame as to why the Nationals have crumbled. There has been no mistake about it. Mike Rizzo had his time here, though. Back in the 2010s, Mike Rizzo was the guy that actually was one of the best executives in all of baseball. And even as of recent, back in 2022, when you pull up that Juan Soto trade, we were just celebrating, hooting and hollering. We were excited about that move because that was the biggest haul that the Nationals could have ever possibly imagined. That has turned out to be the biggest difference maker for this team right now. You have the opportunity to have a 40 home run bat someday with James Wood. You have someone with C.J. Abrams who's mega toolsy and is still only 24, 25 years old. You also have an all-star pitcher with Mackenzie Gore. And then you also have a 20-year-old who's 6'7" and throws 102 miles per hour down in the minor leagues. And then on top of that, You also have another former first-round pick with Robert Hassel III, who has shown promise here and there from the Nationals. That is going to go down as one of the best trades, not only in baseball history, but in sports history. That was a franchise-altering move. Now, unfortunately, the Nationals were not able to figure out things around that point. And that's where it swings back to, again, discrediting Mike Rizzo. Mike Rizzo was not able to put the players in place to actually help those guys around them. He had the hardest job, and that was to get a solid core for the Nationals moving forward. You got that in one trade by trading a future Hall of Famer with Juan Soto. Now, could you or I say yes to that deal? Yeah, we could have. But also to have the you-know-what to make that deal, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of pressure to trade someone who is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. And I think we can all say now Juan Soto will be a Hall of Famer, a slam dunk one, in fact. To make that move in the middle of his prime, that is an insane decision to make. But Mike Rizzo pulled off that move. And that is something I think that a lot of Nationals fans should still give him credit about. Where would this Nats team be without Mike Rizzo and without that trade? You would be without James Wood. You would be without Gore, C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel, Harleen Susana. I mean, those are your 5 top prospects in this organization when you made that trade. That was a huge get by Rizzo. And that's not something that you should just look past and say, well, we could have made that move. Would you have traded a future Hall of Famer? I don't know if I would have had the guts to pull off that move. Mike Rizzo, right now, the discourse surrounding him, I think is wrong. He should be remembered for someone who did help this organization get to a winning place. He should be remembered as someone who helped us win a World Series, who helped build a little bit of not a dynasty per se, but a very good team. In the 2010s, the Nationals had the second most wins in Major League Baseball, just behind the LA Dodgers. And what separated them from the pack was that obviously Mike Rizzo was able to develop players. You had your core pieces with Bryce Harper, and then it turns with Ryan Zimmerman, obviously. Trey Turner, you make that trade for Steven Souza Jr., shipping him off to San Diego, and you get Trey Turner, or you get ship him off to Tampa Bay. We get Trey Turner back in a 3-team deal, and also Joe Ross. Mike Rizzo helped that team in a huge way. And I think right now, I wouldn't be talking about this if it was Dusty Baker, who only spent 2 years here. But with Mike Rizzo, this has been someone who's been with us since like 2008. And to have that run the way that he did, being one of the game's top executives, I think right now, the way that things ended, a lot of Nationals fans kind of underappreciate of what Mike Rizzo did here. He was great in his time here at the Nationals. But I also think it's fair to say that it was time to move on. I was ready to move on this time last year. I had my questions. I liked Mike Rizzo. I did have a little faith in him getting things back on track because he has done it before. But that faith kind of lied into what ownership was going to do. That is if ownership was willing to spend money and willing to open up the checkbook in free agency. That was not the case. And what we saw from Mike Rizzo with what he could do, he was fine, I guess. I mean, bringing in guys like Lane Thomas through a John Lester trade. That is someone who was an all-star potential bat for the Nationals and a legit, really good right fielder for this team. Went on to have a big hit last year in the NLDS for the Cleveland Guardians to ship them off to the ALCS last year. Those are big-time trades that he made. And if you give him the resources, like let's say he has an open checkbook the way that the Dodgers have, obviously he's going to do well there. But even go to teams like the Yankees or the Mets or even, let's say, the Astros. I bet you Mike Rizzo would do pretty well in those organizations because what he brings to the table is someone who gives out pretty smart contracts overall. He has really good savvy trades. And while some things have passed on with him, unfortunately, like analytics and data that have to be used in today's game, he can still do your basic stuff as an executive. So if he were to get a job, I wouldn't be surprised. And if he were to do a good job, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised either. But right now, the Nationals, the reason why they had to move off him was because this was no longer a fit. This organization is going in a data and analytics direction, which is the correct move, by the way. But that's not what Mike Rizzo's cup of tea is. He's that old school boots on the ground type of philosopher that, knows baseball like the back of his own hand. He can tell you which player is good and which player is not just by looking at their swing, by talking to them, by that boots on the ground approach. And that's not to say that the Nationals won't be doing that anymore, but that's what made Mike Rizzo special. And I think that with the time, people will have to come to the realization that while, yes, right now it's a little negative and they're like, oh my God, the reason why the Nationals stink right now is because Mike Rizzo has not been able to hit on first round picks. We just kind of obliterated the farm system over the years. You made a bunch of trades. That's not helping us right now. And you're right. But 2019, we would not be there without Mike Rizzo. Never get that twisted. So thank you all for making Locked On Nets your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So now it's time for Davey Martinez. I think the discourse surrounding him is very twisted as well. I'll tell you why after this. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. So don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. And playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. And I love how quick PrizePicks is. You can make your lineup in just under a minute. And my favorite part might just be that PrizePicks has added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, their rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Now let's tell you about our friends at FanDuel. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I have built parlays, same game parlays, player props, and of course, it makes watching my football on Sundays even better. And you can, whether you're a casual fan or you like diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. If you think that on Monday Night Football, Marcus Mariota, who's potentially the quarterback for the Commanders, goes over on his passing yards, maybe scores a touchdown. He did receive a touchdown in a playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs back in his day. Maybe you think he's going to do that. So you can get with our friends at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, that is FanDuel.com, and download America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel.com. Davey Martinez. I was not happy with the way that things ended with the Nationals. I think it was pretty bad at times. And I think really the beginning of the end was, we could talk about the last few seasons of them finishing 71 and 91, and then on pace at times with his managerial status here, winning or losing 100 plus games. Yeah, we could talk about that. But also, Davey Martinez is still a legend. You might call me all sorts of names out there, but I feel as if I'm pretty fair here. I like to call balls and strikes. And Davey Martinez, and how I view Davey going forward, was if you give Davey the keys to a Ferrari, he will do what he can best. The Nationals, when Davey Martinez got here in 2018, He was given the keys to a Ferrari. I mean, seriously. Think about the talent on that 2018 team before that season. How were they not World Series favorites entering that year? I don't remember if they were, but they had to have been in the top 5. They had talent like Bryce Harper. You had a top 5 prospect waiting in Victor Robles, who everyone thought would be this game-changing player for the Nationals. You had Max Scherzer coming off multiple Cy Youngs and just being a future Hall of Famer. You had Anthony Rendon, a cornerstone of this franchise, someone who was on the up and was just getting better and better as each year went on. You had a shortstop with Trey Turner. You had Adam Eaton. You had a consistent hitter with Howie Kendrick. You had a franchise icon, Mr. National, with Ryan Zimmerman. You had Daniel Murphy coming off MVP caliber seasons for the Nationals. But everything went haywire in 2018. Bryce Harper's final season. Are you going to trade him? Are you not going to trade him? Are you going to try to re-sign him? Is he coming back? Is he going to go to Philly? Is he going to go to New York? Is he going to be a Yankee? All that Davey Martinez had to do in year 1. And then on top of that, the injuries. Howie tore his Achilles. Anthony Rendon missed time with the toe injury. Adam Eaton had an ankle injury and missed a couple of months. The fall off of Daniel Murphy and an injury towards him. Ryan Zimmerman had an oblique injury. And Steven Strasburg also dealt with injuries and only pitched in 22 games that season. That was a team that I think back and think, man, what could have been? What could have been? And then you get in 2019, year 1 without Bryce Harper, the ascent of Juan Soto, that came in 2018, obviously. That think about that real quick. Let me pause real quick. You had 3 future Hall of Famers on that team in 2018. Now, unfortunately, they were rarely on the field together, but you had Bryce Harper, that's a future Hall of Famer. Max Scherzer, first ballot Hall of Famer. Juan Soto, a future Hall of Famer. Three future Hall of Famers on that 2018 team. That is going to be a YouTube video in 20 years from now and think like, that team didn't make the playoffs that had Juan Soto, that had a peak Trey Turner, that had Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg. What went wrong? You're going to see a YouTube video about that one day. I bet you that right now. But he had to deal with all of that. That is a hard thing to come into. But yes, he was given the keys to a Ferrari. And then 2019 comes, the slow start. Everyone wanted him to be fired after 19-31. And then they go on that magical carpet ride, and we all know how it all ends. When Davey Martinez had the keys to a Ferrari, he did what he could do with it. He drove that sucker. And in 2020, throw that away, 60 games, COVID-struck year. Juan Soto misses a couple weeks, which is like half the season, basically. But even then, look at his numbers. He was on pace for a legendary MVP kind of season, and honestly, should have won MVP that year, for being honest, in 2020. And then 2021 comes around. You add in Kyle Schwarber. You think you're getting Steven Strasburg back healthy. You have Max Scherzer coming off. Patrick Corbin, you're hoping, takes another step forward. And then everything just goes haywire in June. Kyle Schwarber gets hurt. You have the injuries to our COVID issues with Juan Soto and Trey Turner. And then you trade Max Scherzer. You trade Trey Turner. Things went weird. All of that to say is this. In 2018, had a very hurt roster in year 1 of being a manager. 2021, which is another year that I think that the Nationals had a real shot with Kyle Schwarber. You were like 2.5 games out of the NL East lead at some point during that summer. Things went weird. Kyle Schwarber had a hamstring injury, was out for a few months. Traded him to Boston. You trade away Max Scherzer. You trade away your franchise shortstop with Trey Turner. Yeah, things are going to get weird after that. You're not going to be good. And then 2022 comes around. You trade away the future Hall of Famer with Juan Soto. And then after that, it's a full-on rebuild. So to say that Davey Martinez is a bad manager, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I, in fact, would say on the pendulum here, he was a good manager. And you might be saying and ripping your hair out thinking that. But hear this point. The years that he had a good, solid team, 2019, 2021, those were good baseball teams. 2019 won the World Series. 2021, things went weird. 2018, things went weird. 2020, COVID year, throw it out the door. Who cares about that? Davey Martinez might get another shot being a manager. It may not happen this offseason, but a team that kind of looks like that similar 2019 national squad, if I'm a GM out there, or if I'm an ownership, I'd give Davey a shot. But where things went wrong this year, and while we had to kind of move off him, was I do believe that he lost the clubhouse this year early on this summer when he kind of called out his players and said, it's not on the coaches, it's on the players, and they have to play better. That was not the right thing to do. I think everybody realizes that, but also Davey is better than that. I do think you can kind of read between the lines and kind of hear what he was saying, because quite frankly, he wasn't wrong. And while the coaching staff here, hand up, I thought it was terrible. I think it was and is, and it's fair to say that they were not very good. But also Davey was kind of right. The players were undisciplined at times, and I do think that the culture was unfortunately not great with the Nationals. But also that's on Davey Martinez to establish that culture. And I do think being that player-friendly manager and the players love him, as soon as you call them out in a public kind of meeting and it goes viral the way that it did, things are going to get weird. And they got weird real quick with the Nationals with him. So with all that being said, Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo, you might remember him right now as being the team or the tandem that really kind of got this Nationals team in a mess. But also remember the good things. And I do think that's fair. Let's be positive about Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez going forward. And you should be grateful for 2019. But also, we're not going to forget what happened to end their era. There's a lot of things to remember with them. Mike Rizzo especially. Mike Rizzo is a legend for the Nationals. Davey Martinez is a legend for the Nationals. They will have that Mike Rizzo day. You'll have a Davey Martinez day with the Nationals. Those are things that have to happen, in my opinion, because you have to honor the people who got you to 2019. Because as we know, it's not easy climbing that mountaintop. And it's a lot harder to get yourself back in those places. But Paul Toboni, you've got some shoes to fill. And whoever the next manager is, you've got some shoes to fill. Let's talk about that after this. Let me tell you about our friends at Monarch Money. And let's be honest, most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they are worth between 401ks, savings, and investments. It's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. And that is why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that helps bring your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or even on your phone. And it's helped me organize my accounts and track my spending and get a better handle on my investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. And Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money is going and how I can make it work harder for me. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And let's be real, making excuses does not solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it to get started. And you just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms or no in-person appointments. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. And it's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. So visit rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnMLB so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Paul Toboni and the new Nationals manager, whoever that may be, you got some shoes to fill. So we just kind of went in on Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. And yes, I know I'm looking at the past. I'm talking about the good days, the bad days. But those are real things that have happened under the Nationals. And Paul Toboni, we have talked about it. This is a new era. This is something that we should feel excited about, and you should be excited about. This is an exciting time for the Nationals. You feel as if you're starting fresh over. It's something that the Nationals have needed. You're putting a fresh coat of paint on the doors and on the walls and all over the lockers and everything to do with the Nationals. But you've got some shoes to fill. So people should be excited about where the Nationals are headed. And I do think this new kind of feeling around the Nationals is a real thing. And I do believe that Paul Toboni is going to have a tall task here in DC. It's not just about getting a new person in the building. While I do think that will kind of upstart this culture and kind of get rid of the bad times that were here with the Nationals, that does not dismiss the good that Davey and Mike Rizzo did. They did some really good things here at the Nationals. And I do believe at times, myself included, we may take that for granted. And with Toboni here, I think that he is going to have a really hard task right here in DC. Now, I believe he's up for it. I believe that this was probably the correct way to go with things. I mean, outside of like Theo Epstein and other made men across baseball, this was a great hire by the Nationals. And this is someone who I do have a ton of faith in moving forward. But to say that he's just going to wave some magic wand and things are going to happen, that's not going to be the case. This is going to be a process. This is going to take some time. It could take a few years before you really see this team kind of get uplifted and get to a spot where you expect them to be. There's a lot of things to clean up here in town. So with a new era comes new patience. You will have to preach patience to yourself. And I'm going to do that to myself as well. But just to kind of wrap everything up here, Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez should be remembered for the good things, in my opinion. Maybe I just woke up in a good mood today. Maybe that's just what it is. But that's truly how I feel. And to think that Paul Toboni is just going to come in here and you're going to see a difference on day one, that's not going to be the case. Don't expect the Nationals to win 90 games in 2026. It's not going to happen. Don't expect them to win 100 games in 2027. It's likely not going to happen. Things are going to get tough. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tall task for Toboni and whoever comes in as a new manager here. But I do have faith in the direction that this team is going in. And I think a lot of National fans out there can appreciate that. And they can look back at this and say, this is going to be different. And this is going to be different. And it's going to feel different. And it's going to be better. I think that's fair to say. And that's kind of a good way to put this new era. So thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.